I'd like to just share a little bit about the trials and tribulations that have gone into resurrecting or reconstructing XKD 548. It's a 9-year project, which obviously work and so on has interfered with your hobbies, but the last 12 months has been, while ever we've been in Sydney, has been 6 days a week. And I've had a lot of support from some very talented people, which I'll tell you about shortly. There were 87 D-types built. That included the 16 XKSSs, and which, for those of you who don't know, the XKSS was the road-going version of the D-type. At one stage, there were 30 D-types, can you believe this, in a back shed at Jaguar at Coventry that they couldn't sell. Now, this car was a car that was on loan to Apple Yards for 2 years. It was on display there. Didn't sell, went back to the factory, and they were getting orders for parts that they'd run out of, so they pulled 4 or 5 cars apart for spares. And 548 is one of those. If you read Andrew White's book, that is documented there. But it's an interesting thing. There's somebody here tonight that was an apprentice at the factory at the time that used to find his way into this locked shed when he'd have lunch sitting in a D-type. And I assume he practiced waving to the crowd for when he won Le Mans or whatever. But, you know, as an apprentice, that's the sort of thing you would have done. And that's Chris Lever, because Chris was an apprentice with Jaguar back in that period. How this all started after Roger Woodley died, who was a very dear friend of mine, and I'm told I should cut this story short by my wife, I purchased the engine for XKD 548 from Penny. It was amongst many, many spares that went up for auction, and it didn't sell at the time. And because I started to think about all of this, and I knew where there were so many original bits and pieces that probably came from 548, could have come from something else, but I got an original rear end assembly and 4 wheels out of New Zealand, which were brought out for spares for the Hislop car. Parts out of America, England, original frame I found, and so on and so on. But having the parts was one thing. Putting them together was another, which needed some very talented people. And before I go any further, I'd like to honour or acknowledge the people that are here this evening that had a lot to do with this car. And I'd like them to come out here with me initially, if they would. I'd like, and there's no rhyme or reason with the way that they're coming out here, but I'd like Bill Collier to come out here, if he wouldn't mind. And is Evo here? Evo Giananti? Oh, he was coming. Wayne Barrett? Wayne's here somewhere. Steve Soulis. Now, Graham Lord, Jeff, his brother, who was at the time building the engine for me, and unfortunately had a bad accident and succumbed to his injuries. Graham was coming today because Graham took over and kept an eye on all of the machining of the parts and so on of the engine, and kept an eye on Jeff's machinist, and then Graham put the engine together. He couldn't make it because he rang me this afternoon. He's got family, son that's now decided to get engaged and so on, and it's all happening today. And then Carrie Hughes, who did the painting on the car, he's on a cruise somewhere. He left yesterday morning somewhere for 7 days around the islands, and he's not here, and he's done a fabulous job. And I kept saying to Kerry, I said, God, Kerry, it's a bloody race car, for Christ's sake. They never painted them that well. And, you know, and he said, oh, but if my name's on it, it's got to be good. So, OK, it's good. So I can't argue about that. Now, first up, Bill Collier. Now, Bill is an ex-Qantas leading hand in their sheet metal department. And I won't go off on a tangent on this, but, you know, they've lost a lot of their really good tradesmen. And, but fortunately, Bill was still working with Qantas when we rebuilt XK510, which that big poster at the back is. And so he had a big hand in that. So when 548 came on the scene, I approached him, and he was a little bit nonplussed. He said, I really don't need a lot more aggro from you. And yeah, I probably should get him to say a few words. When that was being finished, I think it was the 2 days before we were to take it to surface, it was on this floor, the car was over there, and there was about 6 people working on it, and I was sourcing bits and pieces, and I'm up there on the balcony, and I said something about, well, what about this thing? And they said, well, we haven't got it. And I said, for Christ's sake, I said, we take 1 step. I'm standing up there and I'm ranting around saying, take 1 step forward or 2 steps bloody backwards. So he's always talked about it, the Sermon from the Mount. But so, Bill, I'd like to thank you sincerely, because you, for one person, without you, this car would not be here, or would have taken another bloody 5 years or whatever. And I'd like to thank you very, very much for your...
We're not going to do it again, are we?
No, as he said, we're not going to do it again. Now, Wayne Barrett. Now, I've known Wayne for a long time. I had a model shop called Model Cars Australia many years ago, and Wayne was my best model builder. He worked for an engineering firm, and he had about 6 machinists under him. And anyway, he eventually fell out with them, and he came to work with me for a while in this business, and then he retired. And so he spent 2 days a week with me, I don't know, over the last probably 9 years, on and off. And this guy can make a lathe talk, and I'm not joking. He is just a brilliant engineer, and there's nothing that we've ever thrown at him that he said couldn't be done. And that's a wonderful thing to have. And in this day and age, finding decent tradesmen is just very, very difficult. Now, Steve, my ex-partner in classic autocraft, we rebuilt 510. We pulled apart Keith Berryman's car, which was extremely tired at the time, and we needed to make the jigs for the monocoque for 510. So we rebuilt both of those. And when it was finished, I had Lofty England was out here staying with me in '83, I think it was, or '82, and I remember taking him down to the garage, and it's the first time I'd met Lofty, and he's walking around and looking at it and sort of stopping and smiling, and I thought, God, you know, here's God looking at my car. What's he found wrong? And I said, so I was following him around the car, and I said, what's the problem, Lofty? What have you found? And he said, Ian, we never built him this good. And it got written up, 510 got written up all over England, all over the world as being, you know, the best D-type in the world. But then, as Penny reminds me, she calls it the bullshit D-type because everything's polished, and nothing was ever polished on the D-type. But getting back to Steve, not only has he been a great friend, but all through this project, he's done a lot of the panel work. He's the sort of guy that if I had a problem, and as busy as he is, I'd ring him up, and he'd be down here, and we'd work till 10 o'clock at night or whatever. And I'd like to thank you for that, Steve, for all the effort and so on. And of course, he ended up with all the parts, because the D-type across there is the D-type that is one of the clones that we built when we built that one. And it's regarded as probably one of the best in the world. So Steve still had a lot of bits that I needed, so we came to a little arrangement. But Steve, thanks very much, mate. Much appreciated. It's interesting that 25 years since we rebuilt 510 and 526, we've learnt a lot. One of the best things that has happened to me, I suppose, somebody in the club who I've forgotten the name of, one night turned up with some 10x8 photographs of the Anderson car in the showroom in Brisbane, and taken some very, very detailed photographs of it, which have been invaluable because some of these cars have been restored 2, 3, 4 times over the years, and you don't know what's original, what's not original. But these photographs tell you what's original. Now, this car, detail-wise, is much superior to 510 and 526, and both of those owners wouldn't very much like to hear that. But we've got to learn something in 25 years. I'd like to, at this stage, just introduce, if they put their hand up, Rory and Jeremy from the classic throttle shop back there. They are the people that bought my business downstairs. They've come over and especially opened up downstairs, so after, anybody that wishes to wander down and, I was going to say kick tyres, but you're not really allowed to kick tyres. The place will be open downstairs, and I'd like to thank them very much for coming. And if anyone doesn't have a lucky door prize ticket, so I see Tony or Beth, because as first prize there will be either a D-type, a E-type or a Ferrari. You got it, model, and some vintage wine. I spoke to Frank Gardner one day last week, because when Frank Gardner unveiled 510 right here, back in, when did we say? It was 25 years ago, I think. No, 83, was it? Anyway, and a lot of people that, or a number of people here, were here when he did that, and they've never forgotten some of his comments about that. But he sends his best wishes for this evening, and he's not well enough to travel, and actually he's trying to get well enough to go to England and have some special operations with Professor Watson that thinks they can help his ulcerated legs and what on and so on. But that's it, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming. We are overwhelmed. It's wonderful to see so many friends and so many familiar faces. And just enjoy yourself. Thanks very much. You didn't want to say anything, did you? That's good. What have I forgotten?
You haven't forgotten anything.
Oh, Jesus.
Sean's put together this magnificent album of the restoration of the car, of the D, sitting over there, which we'll see hopefully in a few moments. The photographs go on and on and on. On the back couple of leaves, there's a few signatures of the guests who have been here today.
Oh, that's fantastic, Hutch.
It's all done by other people, I might add. I'm just the messenger.
well,
there's a few people that haven't signed it.
Yep.
Yes, Anne and Rob. There'll probably be a place over towards the wall. I'll put it up there, and if you could sign it before you go home, I'm sure Cummins would, as an appreciation and a record of this particularly special day. And well done for being putting it all together.
Thanks very much, Hutch. Sean has been around annoying us while we're trying to bolt things together, and particularly yesterday. You know, I thought the way he was going about, he was lying on the floor and he was doing this and he was doing that, and I thought, geez, he's a good photographer, he's a wanker. So I don't know. So looking at these photographs, I think he's done a fabulous job. Thank you very much, Sean. A couple of things I have forgotten. Jesus, yeah, that right. I don't know whether Sam or Mark's here, but Sam, I should thank. He did a little bit of the file finishing on the body, and Dan Murdoch. This is the type of people that are about. I went to look for the two Jaguar bonnet and tail signs, and I couldn't find them anywhere, so I rang Dan, and it was 11 o'clock yesterday. He just happened to be over at his workshop working on his 120. And I said, Dan, I'm in trouble. I said, do you still have any of the transfers, the Jaguar transfers? No, he said, I don't, Ian. He said, but I got the specifications. He said, I'm coming back that way about 1:30. He said, I'll drop 2 in. And it's just amazing what people will do. So I've asked Penny and Jim Graham if they would do the honours in Unveiling. All of you would know of Penny because she and her late husband Roger were out here in '92 for the National in Sydney, and they had a fabulous collection of very rare Jaguars. And Jim, he in the 60s, he worked for the factory. I think he was in charge of all the press cars, went on the continent and so on, and took cars all over the place. But he also worked with Andrew White in the PR department, and I couldn't think of two very dear friends more fitting than to unveil the car today. Penny and Jim.